Well, we're here visiting Lorien Suárez in Palm Desert, California. This is a discovery of the artist's secrets in her sacred space. So very important for us to visit this artist and to listen to what she can say to us about her paintings. Lorian, how are you doing? Good to meet you in this visit.
Thank you. Yes, it's great to meet you, Milagros, and great to be able to share my artwork with you and with the viewers of the video.
I know that you are very interested into the movement of waters, and geometries are very connected to the fluids of the universe, and it's very say very important for us to hear. What do you have to say about the movement of the waters and the fluids of the universe in your work?
Well, when I began with the series of that I titled Ellen Flow, I just began initially just by being fascinated with water, and I just went with the attraction and just surrounded myself with fountains, videos of waves, just looking at all sorts of currents and flows and the different kinds of movements that water can do. I from that exploration of looking at the patterns, like for example behind me, I saw some interesting patterns that happen in the weather. One of them is called the Carmen von Vortex Street, which is a kind of a vortex pattern that happens in nature, and it has some fascinating geometries. And so as you can see, I really just was enamored by the vortexes and just the whole process of the circulation of water, the intertwining of water in a process of movement and flow. And so part of that interest was flow, as what I describe in the title, and then elan just being this sense of vibrancy and energy that water is able to, it's almost like conduit for it. So it's that whole life energy that is physical, but it's also feeding into life itself. So that's the trajectory from just a sensory fascination with water to more of a cognitive appreciation for the patterns of water and study, and then into more of a metaphysical understanding of connected to life.
I feel that
And
you have a very cosmic orientation in your work. You know, mostly touching dimensions of the metaphysics and more philosophical in that. What can you comment on that?
well, it was interesting because as I was looking at water as a material, I came to connect with the materialist school of philosophy, and there are certain authors that were writing about materials. One of them is Jane Bennett with Vibrant Matter, and she wrote also about Thoreau's work and this whole idea of wild nature being uncontrollable and beyond our ability to manipulate. And in that sense, some of these forces and material of nature are distinct from us. They're beyond our control. And we tend to be very anthropomorphic in our mindset, you know, human based, whereas this is material. And as you can conceive of yourself as being more of a conflagration of materials rather than, you know, a being, although we are beings. But the idea is that we have all these processes of materials that are going on in our bodies. And so if we shift the focus and consider ourselves more as these material flows and the fact that our bodies are composed mostly of water, then yes, it almost takes on a cosmic dimension in the sense that we are a part of all these patterns and materials that have been at play and at work through processes that not only happen here on our planet through nature, but in the whole cosmos and the universe. And so that changes and transforms even the perspective that one would have, which is what I found so fascinating, is that I began to see that my definition of myself, if I follow the trajectory of the sense of what I'm composed of, and not just me, but all of us, of materials, then we are, in a sense, part of the cosmos, and we are a part of these processes, and they have these beautiful patterns, and they do have fractal dimensions. They have patterns that repeat themselves, that have a logic to themselves, and there's a beauty and balance, and yet there's also an aspect of it that is not within your full understanding or control either. It's that aspect of the wild that is nature itself, and we are a part of it. We are not in control of it completely. So
Well, that's a very important thing, because
yeah,
when you talk about quantum physics, you feel and you touches those dimensions that are uncontrollable. The subparticles, and for all these scientific people, are still a mystery.
yeah,
The behaviors and the times and space conceptions has changed totally from even from Einstein. So
yeah,
we're talking about a material world. You talk about material, but I will talk more that your work touches the unmaterial dimensions,
yes,
even material and material dimensions that are being already registered into the Buddhist or Hinduism religious beliefs. So that's why when I see your work, I've been transported to another unknowable that doesn't have the possibility to name the world that I'm navigating in. For
right,
example, I see in your work in the back that you have circled the repeat under the self, but it's also in a spiral center that
yeah,
flows out all these ovoidal forms or shapes, and
yeah,
also one intertwined with the other in a very chance way of connecting, which is also chance in the possibility of not controlling anything is what is even happening right now with the pandemic times. We have
right,
been now touched by what is nature, what is the body, what is loss, what is death, what is the unpredictable part of the universe. And that's what I feel that your work touches that. Now let's go and jump a little bit with your camera to the of course this is a formal visit. Let's go and discover other works besides the one that we have behind you here, and show us your space, your studio there. Okay, jump with the
oh,
camera and show us that. Let's show the other work that you have done on this same spirit of the metaphysical world.
okay,
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 and let's go. Let's start moving around and discovering the studio of Lorien Suárez and showing us what she does into this sacred geometries of the immaterial world. Okay, so now we have, you have another one on the left, no? Correct, this one in here. This is a more, the composition is more solid, is less spiral form. And let's talk to me about this. Let's talk about when you did this work. Is this previous to the other one in here? What is in this geometrical shapes in here for you?
well, this is actually a painting that began much earlier. This is the Wheel Within a Wheel series. And actually, just give me 1 second here as
We are okay with your camera. We're looking okay in here.
okay, okay. So This is now touching on floral patterns themselves, and as I can, I'll zoom in so you can see some of um, these patterns that,
There are flowers like in there, but there's also many circles,
right.
dynamically orbits moving around in one another in here. And what is it that this series differentiate from the one that is Ellen Flow? What is the difference between this one and the first one that we saw there behind you?
Well, in the case of Ellen Flow, I'm really looking at materials themselves as, and these are inanimate materials in the sense of water. Although there are scientists that would that are more adventuresome in saying that water itself may well respond to emotions and may reveal some lifelike qualities. But in the case of wheel within a wheel, I'm really looking at the geometries that you would find in flowers and growing
Could,
forms. So these are
could you
living
repeat us
forms.
again because
And
kind of it broke the conversation. You were talking about wheel within a wheel was what?
it's in these, I'm really looking at living forms and
Aha.
growth. So these are the geometries that are at the core of how plants bloom,
Very interesting. Uh-huh.
develop, their spiral shape. uh, Sunflowers. These are all what would be called life geometries. They're the geometries of life, and they're especially important because these are growth geometries. So they follow a numerical sequence, that the Fibonacci series. So these are certain sequences of numbers that nature reveals through the like the nautilus shell would be another example, or even the patterns of the stems of leaves, or even the branches of trees. I mean, even the way our fingers are positioned in our body. And so these are all innately these particular geometries. So these circular geometries that have certain sequences. And the power of this is also that you can also find these culturally then also being represented in many traditions, everything from Islamic art to the mandalas, and the cathedrals with the rosette windows. These are all revealing these kinds of geometries, and they are what's considered to be, in our eyes, beautiful. We're accustomed to it in classical definitions of the golden mean, and when we see these forms, we associate these with perfect symmetries and beauty.
Very important. And see the colors in there. There are yellows that dominate with contrasting with black and red color. How do you choose the colors in there in this particular work?
Well, a
There are,
lot of it is personal taste, or just exposures to certain colors, and they're definitely found within natural sources. So I mean, you can think of the black and yellow of a bumblebee, or the black and yellow of a sunflower, and then the greens and the reds would just be adding between everything from a triad color theory, uh, design sense, to complementary colors. And
let me ask you something that really came to my mind. Do you tell me about the bumblebee colors or the sunflowers? How is your experience with nature? I know that you're surrounded, but sometimes visit forests, etc. How do you contemplate nature? Do you go to nature very often? Do you have a garden in there around your house? How is your interaction with the real nature? Because your work looks very inspired to nature. How is your connection? How is your daily connection or interaction with nature?
Well, yes, nature is definitely at the heart of my work. I like to follow nature hikes. I look for flowers as I'm in actual trails and photograph them. I
Wow.
I have collections of artworks that have been made, or even botanical portraits of plants. As I find a plant I like, I will look at that and then find materials. But I like going to nearby. There's a forest area near Palm Desert called Big Bear, where I spend a lot of time actually in the forest. And actually, frankly, if I don't have enough time in nature, I begin to feel ill. so,
Wow.
so it's
Very, very spiritual and very
yeah,
mystical too. Okay,
yes,
let's go and see the other work in there. We're discovering different geometrical geometries in here. And this one is from a land flow. See the spirals going in there, the
yes,
subparticles of water in there, the composition. And this is from the Elan Flow series. We can see the
yeah.
difference between one work and the other one. What year did you do this, Elan Flow?
This is from just last year, so
Wow.
2019. Yes, actually during Christmas of 2019. So I
Well,
was.
I have maybe a question. Then, how long does it take for you to sketch, to go over and finish the work? How long does it take, for example, this one that we have in here, Elan Flow? It looks
Well, it
very
can.
intricate and very elaborate, and so
Yeah,
wondering.
it usually takes about, I would say, a month and a half, depending on the details. I'll come so you can see more closely some of the detail and the geometries.
Very
But
beautiful. And the colors, the contrasting, the pinks in there, the circle, the ovoidal shapes. And there's also the spiral. It's just like
yeah,
something, some perpetual movement coming from the center going out towards us. Very important. Is this acrylic? What is the technique that you use in here?
this is acrylic, and
Okay.
I work with a compass and geometric templates, and I construct the design initially,
Uh-huh.
and I from there begin to work on the actual application of paint, and it's a very organic process. So I um, one color will speak to me and move me, and I want to create an interaction with the other color, and it really is uh, it becomes it, its own dialogue. It's a color dialogue that
If
is
you
taken.
will connect this with a musical composition, what would be the relationship that you will make with this work and some kind of musical composition? Would it be an orchestra or an orchestra? It would be some composer that comes to your mind.
Well, it's I think I've been actually following the what I would say would be the harmonies of sound, and how I think that there have been actually studies that have been done where actually there's scholars I think who try to find a connection between music and color.
Yeah,
And
and yours in here would be a symphony, would be what? I'm
yes, I think
relating to a symphony, so more harmonic and not contrasting instruments one to another. And
yeah,
sometimes some works remind me some other artists from Wagner, for the Valkyrias of Wagner, because it's very, disruptive and encountering shapes one another, almost conflicting. And in this case, I think it's a fusing the fusion of very important harmonic shapes in between the spirals and the ovoidals and the curvilinears. All of them, are intertwined in a very, very harmonic way, like a symphony in there. Let's go and jump to the other one. Let's go discover in this studio visit, your creation. Wow, these are like the sparks of water. It's like when you throw a stone in the water, it comes with all the constellations and vibrant concentric movements there. Talk to me
Yes.
about this work. What inspired in there? This geometry is totally different from the other ones.
Yes, these are actually water droplets. So
Okay.
these would be droplets of water on the surface of what would have been a calm or still pool. And so it could be anything from the idea of rain to just droplets. In this case, of course, they're all very perfectly situated. So the rain wouldn't necessarily be quite that
That formal. Yeah.
formal, but it is an interesting, the quality that's interesting of it is seeing how these ripples intertwine with each other and create these waves that interconnect and undulate, and the patterns that emerge from those interactions, those movements.
And
And
if I talk to you, if I tell you this one is more structure, is more predictable in the repetitions of the ripple effect in here. Very interesting because it's more musical too. But the dynamics of the composition is totally different from the other two. What is the title of this? You have a title for this work?
yeah, this is one of the initial works within Ellen Flow. This is Ellen Flow number 3.
And you did this in what year?
I did this in 2018.
Wow. See, when we can, go back into the seeds of this Elan Flow creation. Wow. Let's jump to the other one. It is very interesting. I already saw. Wow. This is more cosmic. This is more sidereal. It has to do with asteroids or multiplication of global or composition or spheres. What can you tell us about this one? And also the colors are so important in here, so mystical, the colors.
Well, this painting is interesting because it's actually based on. I had initially been had someone mention that they would be interested in seeing a painting where I use white as a
Uh-huh.
color,
It's very
and
important.
I recognized that I actually could benefit from introducing more white into my palette. So I took it as a challenge, and part of my thinking was to think of what do I know in nature associated with water that would really draw me to think of white. And so other than ice or snowflakes, I started realizing seafoam. And
Wow.
so I started looking at the patterns of bubbles, seafoam bubbles, and they have
Wow.
their own fractal patterning. And so I spent quite a lot of time just looking at bubbling patterns
Wow.
of seafoam forming and how these bubbles form, and
Multiply.
what. Yes. And there's the intricacy of the sizes and how they're actually, some of the bubbles actually even contain another another microscopic nucleus of more bubbles. And then there's just the differences in the dimensions involved. And so that's a lot of the inspiration of it. The interesting part is that as I was looking at that, I also ran across, while I was researching it, the sand dollar. And
Oh.
if you look at the interior design, the exoskeleton of a sand dollar, the internal structure has these little pockets, circular pockets, and it looks just like seafoam. It's a little bit more predictable in the arrangement, a lot like the work that we're seeing that I showed before. So there's more of an actual, it's a little bit less quote unquote random than seafoam would be, although seafoam really isn't really random. It does have a fractal pattern in itself, but the interesting part was finding an actual organic life form that had a very similar structure to the actual seafoam patterns.
What is the title that you have for this one? Tell us.
This one is Ellen Flow 12.
Wow, and
So
this was done in what year? Right now, latest?
Yes, this is one of the latest, yes.
Wow, this is a discovery for me, yeah? Because you're changed totally from the curvilinear, open curvilinear shapes to this one that is spheres that also remind me the cosmic universe. I mean, it's the sea form in there, but seeing the yellows in there, how the iteration of the circles is really something that is connected to the underworld, to the subparticles of the world, to the quantum mechanics. It's undoubtedly you are connected to a very important part of the universe that the people doesn't define. It's not physical, it's not material necessarily. It's more unmaterial in there. And again, going back to music, what is the music that you will relate this work of yours with kind of music or composition or composer? All your work is very musical. All your work is connected to certain structure that could be transferred to a musical composition.
Yeah, well, I had actually been following some of Handel's water music. So I had that playing in the background. I did try to go ahead and try to find music that had been birthed from the inspiration of a musician who was relaying their inspiration or their interpretation of water. So so that really did play a good amount of time. I did play the music from these composers and did find inspiration through that. Just as it's multiple dimensions of just finding how we're culturally inspired by water. And
very important in there. So let's continue discovering your work in a kind new set of painting you're going to be showing us. And let's see now in the second part of the video, we are going to discover that. Okay, let's go and do that. Now we're going to discover another work from Lorien Suárez, and this one, Lorien is more electric, and there are like electric shocks that connect one pattern to the other. Explain us what is this more dynamic confrontation of the forms that you have in here.
Well, in this painting, I am looking at water currents again. I am looking also at droplets. And the idea is what one could potentially see on the surface of a lake or a pool as droplets form, and these various droplet forms will create currents that interconnect.
Are they currents that are really conflicting one another? Because I see compositions or droplets or the ripple effect, one ripple effect confronting or conflicting to the another one in the composition. That's the difference between this one and the other one that we saw before.
Yes, these are they're crashing into each other in a sense, merging together. And then I'm taking the forms that are forming as they interconnect as these yellow slivers that you're seeing here are just the points of interconnection between the two sets of ripples.
And they create like a kind of electrical vibration that really confronts towards one shape to the other in here. This is different from the other ones in there. And also I see the center, the epicenter of each one of these circles. It's so dark blue that connect you like with the cosmos. It's like an open hole to the universe in there. What could you comment on this? These are like an open inner spaces or mystical spaces in there.
Yes, these are actually they're the darker pools of water. There's just it's reflective of the depth of the material, and yes, there's that sense of deep calling onto deep. I am thinking of it as a quote, that sense that there's something about these spaces that draws a spiritual connection for us, and our own soul is drawn to it. There's that sense of it calling to us.
Very good. Let's go to the next one. Let's see here, running out of time and profiting of discovering your works. And it's here, that's another thing. They look like seeds, you were telling me, no? Like seeds, the iteration of seeds or natural forms. This
Yes,
is,
this would
what
be
can you
like
tell us about
yes, these
this
would
one?
be like pea pods, the seed pods. Is this growth geometry? So the idea is that dynamic, almost like a juggling in nature, the sense of these forms that are each giving birth to or standing beside, and there's actually kind of the growth process itself of as the seeds are maturing and filling the pod.
It's
And
interesting in that because also you're using the same palette than the other ones that we explained before, but in here it's less like the curvilinear centripetal shape that closes into oneself in there. Let's go and jump on the other one. This is a beautiful part. This is totally different, Lorien. This curvilinear for me is like flames shapes. What can you tell us about these two vertical new works in here? What
well,
inspired you?
the one on the right hand side is with the yellow, those slivers were intended to be reflections of lightning patterns. And the idea
Wow.
was I was looking at climatic, the connection with the climate, things like lightning, with water, and I, in particular, was looking at the lightning storms of El Catatumbo in Venezuela, which
In
are
Venezuela.
famous for just the amount of power that nature can create through these electrical discharges. And while I was looking at it, the interesting part was that they're fractal patterns, and they're very similar to the patterns that you would find in your own, the firing of your own synapses in your brain.
And what
So
about the
there's,
flames? Because they look also like flames. Well, flames also are fractal patterns, and it's very important. Did you associate this also with flames? That very,
yes,
very sinuous and very feminine too, if you could go expanding the evocation of the works. It's very voluptuous, dynamic composition in there. What is the
yeah,
title of this work?
this is Ellen Flow number 10.
So
And it's
you
interesting that,
number each one of them. Wow,
yes,
this is interesting. So, wow.
yeah,
Okay,
it's interesting that you're saying that, because they do. There's flames have that sense of almost like a dance, and it's
exactly.
mesmerizing in the undulations and the dance of the current. So yes,
Wow.
uh,
And what about the other? Do you change in here the palette to something more, less warm colors and more to whiteness? What is the difference between this one and the other one? It's also related to lightning.
no, in this case, I was looking at a waterfall. I mean, I was remembering Angel Falls, and this fall
Wow.
of a sense of the mist that
Yeah, we see the circles there at the background. Now I'm seeing it, the circles, like
so
bubbles, like Yeah, like in the ethereal elements of the mist in the
Yes.
waterfall. Wow.
Yes. So it's that sense of where the waterfall begins to, the actual water itself forms a mist and creates this atmospheric cloud-like.
And did you
Um,
say that you were inspired in the Angel Falls? See, now you are related to your country, you're Venezuelan American, but I see that here you're connected to part of the processes of nature in Venezuela.
yes,
This is the
I
Angel Falls, and the other one is was the Catatumbo lightning, which is also.
yes. Yeah, with Angel Falls, I visited. So I remember Canaima, and
Oh,
I actually was there and felt the mist. So it's
amazing.
yeah, it's one of the world wonders. So it's just reminiscent of that experience itself, and just exploring that dynamic of another flow of nature, another current. And in this sense, with Angel Falls, it's so amazing just because of the depth of time involved in the passage of that fall and the landscape, and the almost the prehistoric quality of that.
And the
um,
ancient
landscape. Yeah.
evocation that gives you. Now
Yes.
let's jump to what you showed me before. I think it's in the tables. What are the tools of the trade? How do you work with that? And you show me that, and it's very important. This is part of your secret in here. How you
Yes.
design, how you create the circles, the ovoidal forms in here. So you sketch them with what? With pencil over the canvas. You design it in the computer. How do you do it?
So I actually will create the designs on the canvas with pencil, and I use these templates and some of the French curves as well. And
Wow.
so but they're intuitive compositions. They're compositions that I'll just craft by hand.
Well, this
And
is interesting because we're discovering your secret. And so you're not designing in computer, but go organically into your intuition, into your
yes,
work, into the canvas, and selecting the colors by the connection from one another. Wow, this is the amazing way of discovering artists in their studios. We can discover what is behind the scene, behind the canvas, behind the exhibition in a gallery or in a museum. Now we have another surprise in here that you have in there, which is the works on paper by Lorien Suárez, which is in here. Another way, another medium where you're discovering it. What is the technique in here? What are you using in
this
here as a
is
medium?
yes, this one is watercolor with gouache, and this is actually the second artwork in Wheel Within a Wheel. So this is
Wow.
wheel number 2.
I love the transparencies that you created there, the aerial composition with the whiteness in the background. I love it. Show us more in there. That let's see the other one.
So
Wow, this
this
is more like a bubble, like the mist of the water.
yes, so this is
Wow.
Wheel Within a Wheel number 10, and these were around 2004. So
Wow, long time ago, but it's very actual. It's very current. Wow, this is also the flower shapes in here.
this one is actually, I think, more of a water currents and patterns, but it definitely has that interconnectedness of forms that are, again, it's that connection between material and life.
I
So
would say
the
also you say material, but I always insist there's also and material, and because it
yes,
touches the realm of metaphysical dimension of the
yes,
universe in there. Well,
yes.
our time is running out. We want to thank you. Wow, that's another one. That's amazing. It's more with the blackness or the bluish in there. What is the title of this one?
This one's Wheel Within a Wheel. This is number 4,
Wow. Year? What year?
2003, 2004.
Wow, that's
Yeah.
amazing to see that. It's a discovery. Well, we want to
Very
thank you. Let's point your camera to say goodbye to our viewers in here, and let's say, wow, thank you for sharing your spirit and sharing your heart and sharing
uh-huh.
your secrets of creation, which is the most valuable in a visit an artist studio. L'Oreal
Uh,
Suarez, thank you very much. And
yes.
we keep in there with YouTube. The people can see it, and also on Instagram and in your website. Thank you so
Mhm.
much, Lorian. Thank you.
Thank you. My pleasure. Thank you.